Welcome along to the Matchbook Champions League podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey, joined as ever by Mark O'Haire and Adrian Clarke. And this is when the Champions League really starts ramping up. We had the first legs of the playoff round last week, and now we have the second legs and a couple of these ties eagerly poised with one goal in all the games, I think, that we're going to cover on aggregate. And then we're going to do any other bets, long shots, and best bets. And those games, incidentally, that we are covering in our main section are Real Madrid City, Bayern versus Celtic, Milan versus Feyenoord, and PSV versus Juventus. Before we get going and I bring the lads in, insights.matchbook.com, you get a full recap of all the guys' picks. That'll be available from Monday afternoon. Well, we're checking that out if you want a recap. And if you do, hit that like button and subscribe or follow wherever you're watching or listening. And as ever, check out the Matchbook Betting Exchange. We do see, again, this weekend, another example, a lot of people using the bet builders, basically getting the benefits of the sportsbook, but we also have the exchange pricing, which we'll touch on as we go game by game here. But let's start with Real Madrid versus Manchester City. Madrid, of course, leading 3-2 from the first leg, but in the 90-minute markets, they're 191, 10-11 to win. Manchester City are 3.9. The draw is 4.5. Both teams to score, yes, 1.4, very short price, obviously. City get a half goal head start in the Asian handicap line, effectively draw no bet at 2.08, and 3.5 is the total. Adrian, we'll start with you. Do the prices here probably reflect what maybe they should have been in the first leg, in the sense that are Madrid just a better team than Manchester City at the moment, despite maybe that win on Saturday?
Yeah, I think they are. I mean, this isn't vintage Manchester City, but I have to say that performance against Newcastle, I don't think any of us saw that one coming. Much better, wasn't it? I think part of it, Newcastle were just miles off it for some reason, but yeah, Nico Gonzalez was very good. Obviously, Marmoush with a hat trick. He looks like a great addition, and Kusanov as well, settling in. So yeah, I mean, they might be a better City in the second leg than they were in the first. But are they good enough to win at the Bernabeu? I don't know, and I'm not actually going to go down that route as it happens. I mean, because they've won once, haven't they, in 6 attempts, Manchester City in the Champions League at the Santiago Bernabeu. And I'd say that every time they've gone there, they've had a better team than they've got now. So, they've still only won 1 in 6. So it is a long shot for them. But I'm kind of going to steer away from deciding whether they are going to do it or not. Instead, I want to look at goals, really. Both teams to score is 1.42. If you pair both teams to score with under 4.5, jumps massively to 2.25. So, you're probably looking at the 3-2 kills you, or the 4-1. But other than that, a lot of scores on your side, including the draw, 1-0 and 2-2 draw, which is, possibility, isn't it? Given that Real Madrid did win that first game. My feeling is that these two teams can't resist it, and that they will have a great game, and it'll be attack minded. But at the same time, Ancelotti is so experienced, so good in the Champions League. I just don't know if he'll let it get too out of hand. Just don't know if he will. I mean, what they could do is be a little bit more pragmatic than usual, draw City onto them, and then look to pick them off on the counter, which they did obviously amazingly in that first leg. So that's probably one way to do it in regards to getting the job done, because I think you can always hurt City on the counter, especially with the players that Real Madrid have got. But if City score, things could get very interesting, couldn't they? I was looking at both teams to score at the Bernabeu. It's occurred in the last 5 home games for Real Madrid. In the Champions League, it's occurred in 8 straight games, which I found unbelievable. Real Madrid just aren't keeping clean sheets at home in the Champions League. So, City have got every chance of scoring here. But, as we saw in that first leg, Real Madrid definitely have the players to hurt Guardiola's side. What I will say is that I think Rudiger's back. I think Alaba as well. They'll make a difference. I'm pretty sure of that. But it's going to be an interesting game tactically. It really is. But if you go with this one, both teams to score, I've outlined the reasons why I think that's a winner. But go with the under 4.5, which is a bit scary to do, I guess, after that game in the first leg and that 3-3 in this fixture in a previous season. If you do want to go with the under 4.5, that's the way to do it. Got a lot of scores on your side, and you don't really have to worry about who's going to win it or not. So that's the route I'm going down. I do think City will go into it with more confidence off the back of that Newcastle win, but this is a big old ask.
Yeah, where Adrian's going to go with that both teams to score an under 4.5 goals angle, which we've done the last few months. That's 225 incidentally. Mark, take it away with your pick here. So we've had a couple of false dawns perhaps on Manchester City, and maybe the most notable one was that 6-0 win away to Ipswich. Compare that to Saturday. Where was that? Was it more impressive, that win against Newcastle, or around the same for you?
Oh no, it was chalk and cheese, really. Hugely impressive at the weekend, absolutely. I wasn't as impressed as most people were by the Ipswich win. I thought the first sort of 20 minutes or so, they were put under plenty of pressure, and their quality showed in the end. But I think at the weekend, Adrian is right. You have to sort of balance it out a little bit by the opposition for whatever reason. Newcastle weren't at the races, but Nico Gonzalez made a big difference. I think he was the key difference maker in that match. I know Marmoush takes all the headlines for his hat trick, but in Nico Gonzalez, you've got a player, a frame and physicality of a player who can perhaps take over the Rodri role between now and the end of the season. I was really surprised he wasn't in the starting 11 for the first leg of this fixture, actually, and that's always a concern with Man City and Pep Roulette, really, sort of starting with Stones in the holding role and leaving Nico on the bench. But so interested to see where and how he takes his City side to Madrid this midweek. The first leg was, as expected, quite a fantastic game, thrilling, sort of end to end in terms of goal-mouth action. I don't think City could have too many complaints about the final result, despite the way in which it ended. Pretty tough to take from their perspective, being in that position and chucking it away. But we've seen that too many times now this season, City sort of suffering a second half collapse or a collapse in the final quarter, really. And the errors, the draining of confidence, quite difficult to sort of comprehend from a side we've been kind of so accustomed to sort of dominating domestic and European football for quite so long, really. So it's quite shocking when it plays out in front of you. But this is a tough task. Akanji's out. We're expecting Ake and Diaz to be okay or there or thereabouts. Haaland, a doubt after the weekend too. So that's something to watch as well. But more often than not, when City have performed better than they have, which is the standards are pretty low at the minute, it's come at the Etihad. Away from home, they continue to toil on their travels, and results-wise, they've been pretty horrifying, actually. So they've lost 12 of their last 25 matches, home or away, but exclude the Etihad, and it's 9 defeats and 14 away games, 3 wins and 2 draws. The wins: Orient, unconvincing; Leicester, unconvincing; and Ipswich, when they were for a good hour or so. The draws were 2-2 at Brentford, when they got absolutely battered and conceded late on, and Palace. That's not a great sample to go to the Bernabeu and chase a game when you're sort of trailing by a goal. In that 14-game sample that dates back to late October, they've managed just 2 clean sheets away from home, both at bottom 3 Premier League opposition. They've conceded 2 goals or more in 11 of those 14. They conceded 4 at PSG, 5 at Arsenal. Now, 11 of those 14 games did see both teams to score pay out, and we know all about their ability in the final third. That's unquestionable, but can they keep Madrid down to sort of 2 or 3 goals? I don't believe they can, in all honesty. Adrian sort of already pinpointed how he thinks the game might play out tactically, and I completely concur with that. The positive is Madrid have their own sort of defensive deficiencies, and yes, they might have a couple of key players back from injury, and Rudiger and Alaba, who've both trained. Is he going to chuck both of them in straight away? I'd be surprised if so. I think Asensio will start at centre half alongside Rudiger. Fede Valverde will play right back again, I presume. So they are sort of chips in their armoury defensively. But kind of going forward, there's few better in the world right now in terms of playing personnel and systems and Real Madrid to sort of score goals on the break and cause problems. They could have been 2 or 3 goals up at the Etihad inside the first 15 minutes. And if they can do that, when the scores are level, then how are they going to perform when when sort of the tide has turned and sort of there's transitional plays and counter-attacks going their way. So they've got the weapons to really hurt Man City, and I think they will. So I'm going to back Real Madrid to win and both teams to score, 256, which I think is a nice price. It's been the right selection in 7 of those 9 City defeats away from home, going back to October. Arsenal, PSG, Villa, Brighton, Sporting, Bournemouth, Spurs. They lost and saw both teams to score in all of those fixtures away from home. And yeah, the big question for me is, can they contain Mbappe, Bellingham, Vinicius, Rodrigo for 90 minutes while chasing a game? I don't think they can. So yeah, expecting a goal fest and think Real Madrid will come out top.
Okay, so that's Real Madrid, both teams to score. Yes, 256 for Mark. Agent's going for both teams to score, same as Mark, but under 4.5 goals, 225. If you combine all 3, which you will, for a £10 money back podcast bet builder, you actually get a 4-to-1 shot here, 5.0. So check this out in inside.matchbook.com. Post recording, Real Madrid to win, both teams to score under 4.5 goals. If you put that into your matchbook bet builder, and you'll get your money back as a free bet up to £10 on Thursday morning if that bet loses. So maybe a fun one to watch. Real Madrid versus Manchester City on Wednesday night should be a great watch. Let's move on to Bayern Munich versus Celtic. I was debating myself whether to put this in or not, but obviously there is that Celtic angle to it. So let's look at the betting. Bayern Munich are 1.19 in the 90-minute markets, and they of course lead 2-1 on aggregate. Celtic 18.0 on the match with betting exchange. If you want a flyer on that, draw is 9.6. Both teams to score, yes, 194. The Asian handicap line sees Celtic get a 2.25 goal head start at even money. And the total for this game is 3.5 overs, 179. So, Adrian, I mentioned debating whether to put this in or not, because obviously it's not a game we would tend to cover given the prices. But what did you make of that first leg? I thought Celtic's second half, maybe the opening 2 or 3 minutes or 30 seconds perhaps, it caused Bayern 1 or 2 problems maybe?
They did. No, they did. I just think maybe it was a bit of... Bayern Munich have given them a bit of false hope. That's how I kind of see it. Like, I think Bayern Munich was... are so superior to Celtic, we know that, and we saw it at times, didn't we, in the game? But to give them their dues, they stuck at it, didn't they, Celtic? The chins didn't drop. They stayed in the game, and then in the second half, they definitely had some moments, didn't they? And obviously scored. There was penalty appeals. There's things started to happen, and that's why Celtic are suddenly thinking, "Hang on, we might just be able to produce a famous upset here." And I wouldn't want to take that away from them. Every team's got a chance, haven't they? But I almost feel that it was almost so easy for Bayern that they just coasted a little bit, and it's made the second leg much more interesting than maybe it should be. That's kind of where I'm at with it, because they didn't even dominate possession really in the second half of that game. I think it will be different here. I just do. I mean, Celtic. Well, how do you go about it if you're Brendan Rodgers? Because sure, you can't go gung-ho, not at Bayern Munich. So you have to sort of stay in the game, and I think you have to be quite pragmatic and then look to be really clinical when the odd opportunity comes your way. I think that has to be the way until the second half when they can maybe cut loose. But it's a difficult game. It's a really, really difficult game. Bayern Munich 1.19, aren't they, to win the game? So I can't sit here and say, yeah, Bayern Munich on the nose. But if you think they can win to 0, which I do, then that 1.18 becomes 2.14. So I think that's a much more palatable price. Celtic at times, certainly in that first half, struggled to get over the halfway line, and I think it might be a little bit like that for them in the game. They have blanked as well, Celtic, in 5 of their last 7 away games in the Champions League. This season, they had a 0-0 draw at Atalanta, which was a good result. 0-0 in Zagreb as well. So, even though they played well in those games, they didn't score. So that's an issue. Bayern, they aren't exactly clean sheet kings, are they? I think they've had 2 from 4 in this competition at home this year, PSG and Benfica. But if you look at all comps at home, it's 7 of the last 13 have seen wins with a clean sheet. So 7 of the last 13 would see this particular bet land, really. So, yeah, and look, their home record's imperious. We know that. They've won 16, drawn 4, lost none of their last 20. And look, Celtic away from home, no win in 15. 3 draws, 12 defeats. So, yeah, for me, everything points towards a pretty comfortable evening's work for Bayern Munich, who shouldn't be sloppy or casual this time around, because look where it's got them. They could have almost had a night off here, but because they let Celtic back in, they've got to be on it early doors, and I think they will be. They'll get their nose in front and then see the job through. I wanted to go Bayern Munich half-time, full-time, but it's so short. It's really short. I think it's 1.4 something. So for me, this is the best route in Bayern Munich to win the clean sheet.
Okay, quite a strong case from Adrian there, Mark. And we've seen Celtic this season at least try and be more defensive, as Adrian touched on with those couple of examples away from home. Atalanta obviously rode their luck, but other games as well. You expect Celtic to get on the score sheet here. So how does that game look, or how does the opening 20 minutes look? How does Celtic go into the Allianz Arena and manage to get themselves on the score sheet and maybe make a tie out of this?
I don't expect Celtic to get on the score sheet, but in terms of probability and prices, I'm willing to sort of back them to have a chance to get on the score sheet. Big credit to them for that first leg performance. I thought they stood up to the Bayern challenge, put them under real pressure in the second half. Yeah, they did show too much respect in that first half, and that's something Brendan Rodgers talked about post-match. But unfortunately for them, they conceded a stunner from Elise to put them on the back foot, and then concede right at the start of the second half. So it's always going to be difficult. But yeah, they battled back really well in that second half, and I think they'll take a lot of positives from it. I mean, Rodgers was typically kind of exaggerating in his press conference, saying that Bayern were hanging on at the end. They weren't hanging on, but they were under pressure for the most part of that second half, or at least the last half hour. And I think there's a couple of, they're not going to qualify. I'll say that they're going to go out here, but I think they can cause Bayern a few issues. Bayern defensively defend very high, and I do think Celtic have got the tools in the likes of Kuhn, Maeda, Ida as well. They're all sort of tricky, got a bit of pace about them, clever runs. They will have an opportunity or two in this match to get on the score sheet. It's whether they can be clinical enough to take them. They only had 6 shots at Villa Park and scored twice. They got on the score sheet despite getting walloped by Dortmund on match day 1. The Atalanta performance away wasn't great, but they still managed to scrape that 0-0. Dinamo, the less said about that game, the better. But this is different. Obviously, the tables are turned. It's a knockout tie. They're trailing. They're going to have to be a little bit more front foot at some point. They're not going to get the result. I fully expect Bayern to win this game probably pretty comfortably too. Celtic's away record in this competition is talked about pretty routinely whenever they go away in this competition. They've conceded 4 goals or more on 4 occasions in the last 9 away days. At least 2 goals in all 7 of those, all of which have been defeats in the last 9. So I expect Bayern to score at least twice, probably 3, considering the class they have in forward areas: Kane, Musiala, Zane, Gnabry, Elise, all of which are fit and available. They scored 22 in this competition already. But again, just a glimmer of hope maybe. Bayern were absolutely battered at Leverkusen at the weekend. They didn't have a shot until the 72nd minute. It's the first time in history they failed to have a first half shot in the Bundesliga. They were very, very fortunate not to concede in that 0-0 draw. Leverkusen hit the woodwork twice. Florian Wirtz had a great opportunity to win the game late on, failed to take it. And there might be a bit of tired legs, a bit of fatigue in there. And Adrian talked about it. They're not the most clean sheet heavy side for a team so dominant in their domestic league, and even in the Champions League. Slovan Bratislava scored here. Dinamo Zagreb scored twice here. Holstein Kiel in the bottom 3 have scored 3 times here just a fortnight ago. Heidenheim scored twice here already this season. So Bayern do have a tendency, I think, to drop their guard when sort of running away from teams. There could be a few tired legs after the weekend. They've got Frankfurt to come at the weekend, this coming weekend as well, which will be a tough test. So perhaps attention might turn there early doors if they get 2 or 3 goals ahead, and Celtic might be able to nick a consolation or 2. It's 2.5 for the Celtic for Bayern to win and both teams to score. It's obviously not a strong play, but it's a price that interested me, just considering I've been on a few of those Bayern games and Bayern to win to 0 and been burnt. Slovan Bratislava in particular. They just have a tendency to chuck one in at a time.
Okay, yeah, tough call on this. So basically, it's choose your poison here: Bayern win and both to score no or yes. And despite Adrian's great case, I thought Mark towards the end there just did enough to hang on with the both teams to score yes. That bigger price, the crucial bit there, 6-4. You're getting on that 2.5 for Celtic essentially, really to get on the score sheet. But look, if they get the first goal, who knows? We will move on to Milan versus Feyenoord, and take a look at the betting that we have on matchbook.com. Milan going into this second leg at home. It's the early kickoff tomorrow, 1-0 down, and it's 143 for Milan to win in 90 minutes. Feyenoord 8.8, and the draw is 5.2. Both teams to score, no slightly favoured at 195. The Asian handicap line sees Feyenoord getting a 1.25 goal head start, and the goal line for this one currently stands at 2.5. Overs is 174. Mark, for you, this game, what were your thoughts on the first leg? And with Milan going in 1-0 down here, is the market adjusted enough there based on the game state there essentially, or Milan still a bit of value at 143?
It's probably gone a bit over the top really on Milan to win. I expect them to bounce back, but they are a short price. It's a tough betting heat. I thought the first leg, what was my thoughts? Dreadful watch, horrendous game, settled by an error from Mike Maignan in the Milan goal. Feyenoord did hit the woodwork, but sort of little else happened in that match, and Milan rarely threatens and were quite lackluster actually. And the game had a total XG that came just over the 1.0 mark, which kind of goes to show the lack of real goalmouth action. And it was an interesting one. Feyenoord obviously sacked Brian Prisk on the eve of the first leg and brought in Pascal Boschart to replace him, the timing of which was quite peculiar. But yeah, they did edge that first leg, but there's not been many signs of a huge improvement or a new manager bounce. At the weekend, they were held 0-0 at home to NAC Breda, and Breda were the better side, really. And of course, attention would have probably turned to this match. They might not have been sort of fully focused on that. They did make a few changes, but the positives, I guess, are back-to-back clean sheets. They'd only managed 3 in their previous 16 games before the sacking. That resilience will definitely be tested at San Siro. But yeah, I do expect a response from Milan and Sergio Conceição sort of changing shape, really. He went with the so-called Fab Four in the first leg. So Rafael Leao, João Felix, Christian Pulisic, and Santiago Jimenez. They were all sort of squeezed into the starting 11, but they did look unbalanced. Didn't look like a typical Conceição side. He rested and rotated his squad at the weekend against Verona. Returned to a more familiar sort of 4-2-3-1. Suspect he'll persist with that this midweek, and we'll get a more balanced display from Milan. And look, Santiago Jimenez has hit the ground running since his move from Feyenoord, and he'll be fired up to lead the line against his former club. And Milan are unbeaten in 12 at San Siro. They're warranted favourites. But sort of finding a way to make them pay wasn't particularly easy, in my opinion. Conceição sort of renowned for his pragmatism. That's his typical approach, and he does like a sort of grind. So it might not be the most watchable second legs for goalmouth action. Could be quite feisty, but yeah, unless of course Feyenoord get the first goal, and that's the issue with these knockout ties. A goal and the timing of that goal can just change the complexion of the match and the tie entirely. So your sort of pre-match planning analysis can go straight in the bin. So if Feyenoord don't score the opening goal, I do think Milan will have to grind them down a little bit. And so the bet for me was Milan to win and under 4.5 goals at 176. It's quite an unsexy price, but I do think the bet has legs. 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, 4-0, 2-1 or 3-1. They've got the firepower to score a couple here. But Feyenoord, yeah, just a big question mark over them still coming into this match, despite that first leg, because they conceded 21 goals in the league phase of the Champions League, which was 7 more than any other side who finished in the top 24. They have got an ability to concede quite a few goals, but it's whether Milan sort of put the foot down and really go for it or not. My suspicion is they won't. They'll be quite patient and probing, and will try and grind them down. But yeah, Milan to win and under 4.5 goals.
Okay, Mark found it a difficult game to call. Aidan, how did you find it?
Yeah, I definitely can see where it's coming from. As soon as I started thinking about this game, I just thought of opposed goals, and I want to get probably Milan on side. So it didn't take me long to really come to my decision, and it is along the same lines as Mark. I'm just going to go 1 goal further and go Milan to win and under 3.5 goals. That first leg was rubbish. It was not good. Very low on the XG. It didn't have one big chance, and only 2 matches in this season's Champions League so far have failed to create a single big chance. So that's one of the 2. So yeah. Will it be completely different in the second leg? I don't think so. No, I think it will be similar. Conceição is a grinder, isn't he? I mean, he will. He's a bit like old school Simeone. I don't know. His teams are quite aggressive, but they're not particularly expansive. And look, they've had a couple of sort of clean sheet wins of late, albeit against Empoli and Verona. Either side of that defeat in the Netherlands. Milan's last 11 games in all competitions, I've seen 9 matches go under 3.5, and 7 of those 9 have gone under 2.5. So Milan under Conceição have been involved in tight games, basically, even though they've got good forwards who probably should make the difference in the tie. Yeah, I really like Leao and Jimenez. If Felix and Pulisic are, got the potential to do well as well, of course, at this level. Feyenoord, I can't really fancy them. They've kept 1 clean sheet. Prior to that game against NAC Breda, where it was goalless, they'd had 1 clean sheet in 18 away games in all comps. And this is, a lot of those games are in the Eredivisie, where Feyenoord really should be going away from home and keeping clean sheets. So they're not good at defending. And the new manager has clearly concentrated on that because they were so leaky in the group stages. Obviously, the focus is on organisation. So I don't think this will be a wild game at all. They're going to look to protect what they've got, and they might make it quite awkward actually for Milan. But ultimately, I think Milan will win the game. It could be a 1-0 that they go to extra time or even pens, or maybe a 2-0. I think this is going to follow the same lines as that first leg. So yeah, I'm going to go just one step further than Mark. Milan to win under 3.5 goals, just bumps the price up to 2.18.
Okay, and we'll lock that in as the bet. Yeah, you can see a 1-0, and maybe this game going all the way to extra time. But yeah, we'll lock in Milan and under 3.5 goals, 2.18, and move on to PSV versus Juventus, the final game we're going to cover in the main section here. PSV are 2.4 to win. They're 2-1 down from the first leg. Juventus are 3.05 in the 90-minute market. The draw is 3.8, more on that price in a second. Both teams to score, yes, 165. The Asian handicap line sees Juventus get a quarter goal head start, and the total for this game is currently 2.5. And we will start with you, Mark, on this one. What was your takeaways? Again, similar question from the first leg. Juventus holding a 2-1 lead going in. What will be their approach? Because they've obviously been the draw specialists throughout, particularly in Serie A.
Yeah, I think they're in a good place at the minute. They were the deserving winners of that first leg. 2-1 may not do them entirely justice. I know the shot count read 15-12 to PSV, but that doesn't sort of tell the full story here. PSV scored just with 1 of 2 efforts on target, but apart from that, they didn't really create too many clear-cut opportunities, whereas Juventus started really, really well. Could have been sort of out of sight really in the first half hour or so before Weston McKennie scored that cracking goal. They've already beaten PSV twice now this season. Obviously, they have that 2-1 lead from the first leg, but they met on match day 1 where they deservedly won 3-1 in Turin as well. So they'll be pretty confident going to Eindhoven, I think. And, I think they're more than good enough to get something out of this game in terms of progression. PSV will be confident themselves getting Juve back to the Netherlands. They're unbeaten in Eindhoven since November 2022. They're unbeaten in the last 14 home European games as well. They've won 9 of those. The last time they failed to score at home was January 2023. So there's a lot of stats and trends that back PSV up here to get something out of this game and possibly overturn it. But I'm not overly convinced. They came through the league phase having played 3 of the sides who were eliminated, which is quite unusual. So their schedule was relatively kind. They also got to play Liverpool, who had already sort of secured a top 2 finish and made a host of changes on match day 8 as well. So you sort of take that into account. Domestically too, they've really dropped off it of late. Played Utrecht at the weekend as well. And yes, they have eyes on this match too, but that's a rescue a point in stoppage time. Sort of created and conceded a ton of chances in that 2-2 draw, and that's been the way really recently in the Eredivisie since they've sort of surrendered their position at the top of the table to Ajax. And Peter Bosch, his teams are known to be sort of front foot, but not so sort of solid defensively too. And I think that's some worrying characteristics when you play against a side like Juventus, who have now won 4 straight games, having won the Derby d'Italia on Sunday evening against Inter. Produced a really impressive second half performance in that match to win the game. They've really sort of turned their form around. They'd won just 1 in 8 before that 4-game winning streak. And, you can kind of look towards the January signing of Kolo Muani to have a sort of transformative effect on this team, because he's scoring and creating, and he's given them a fresh new look really in forward areas. They're looking really slick now going forward, and first clean sheet in 6. Lautaro Martinez sort of helped in that regard in terms of his finishing at the weekend. But they've proven they can batten down the hatches. They can play possession football, take the sting out of games when necessary. You talk about them being sort of draw specialists for the most part of this campaign, which they have been, but their record for avoiding defeat is pretty remarkable, really. So it's mad to see them so far down in the domestic title race, but they've only lost 4 games in 36 across all competitions this season. And I think that resilience, that fortitude is something I want to tap into here. So, kind of getting the sort of digging into sort of the archive here, but Juventus being an Italian side going away from home in Europe, defending a lead, I'm not expecting them to go out all out attack here. I think they'll be quite happy to sort of preserve and sit on what they've got, and rather than going toe-to-toe with PSV. So they'll be patient, they'll be probing, happy to soak up that pressure and wait for opportunities. And considering this team have lost just once on their travels all season, that was at Napoli when the decisive goal came from a penalty. I think they're good enough to avoid defeat here, and quite surprised we can get them with a quarter goal start on the Asian handicap at 189. So as long as PSV don't win this match in 90 minutes, we're making money. And this is a side who've been to Club Brugge, locked it down, drew 0-0, locked it down at Villa, drew 0-0, perhaps a little bit lucky to do so on that occasion, drew 0-0 at Milan, drew 1-1 at Atalanta, drew 1-1 at Lille, drew 4-4 at Inter, which was a real head scratcher. But it shows they've been to a variety of very good sides, very different styles, and been very difficult to beat. So, kind of going back to that statistic there, 4 defeats in 36 across all comps, 1 defeat on their travels all season, and we're getting them with a quarter goal start here against an inferior side in my ratings. So happy to be with it.
Okay, at the Asian handicap, if you bet Juventus plus a quarter of a goal, half your bet's on draw no bet, and half your bet is on plus half a goal, which is double chance essentially. And Adrian, a lot of Mark's case was pro the draw there, to be fair. And we've mentioned they are the draw specialists, as much a draw team. A biggest draw, was it Anderlecht that used to draw all the time in the Champions League? They just seem to have taken over that mantle. But you're back in the draw here because it's currently 3.8.
Yeah, Mark did the sales pitch for me, really.
He did,
yeah, that's not much more to add. Almost felt like he was going to say draw at the end, that he changed his mind. But look, PSV, how long was it since they lost? I know they hadn't lost at home all season, but I didn't realise it goes all the way back much, much further than that. So, really, a Juventus win might look unlikely in that sense, mightn't it? So, for me, they can absolutely avoid defeat here. Juve, they've got that lead. 2 away wins in the last 10 road trips, but 7 draws. When they go away from home, it's a draw 7 out of 10 times, certainly this season. So, yeah, I'm happy with that odds in my favour, and the price, obviously at 3.8, is lovely. They did win 3-2 in Leipzig, didn't they, in the match early on in it, the competition, first couple of weeks. Since then, 3 away draws and a grand total of 2 goals. And I do think that they'll set their stall out here and try and calm down what should be a really good atmosphere actually in Eindhoven. It's an atmospheric ground. On the road in general this year, 1-5, drawn 6, lost 1. But they're up against a quite an experienced PSV team now. These guys have played a lot of games in the Champions League the last few years. It's quite a settled team. I know they've lost Jimenez, but not Jimenez, that's Feyenoord rather. But De Jong is still the leader of the line. You've got Bakayoko, you've got Veerman, Perisic. There's a few others as well that have sort of played a lot of Champions League football last couple of years, and so they can be competitive for sure. I don't think they get blown away by Juventus, but I don't know if they'll have enough to win the game. So I agreed with Mark. I think Juve were good value in that first leg. They had the better chances, and I think they're more than good enough to go to a very, very difficult place, as we've outlined, and get the result that they need. I'm thinking here it's 0-0 or 1-1 all day long, but we're still covering the 2-2 just in case things get a bit lively.
Okay, 3.8 if you want to play at that. We'll lock in the safer option of Juventus plus a quarter of a goal. And it was a club beginning with A, lads. It was close. It was AEK Athens in 2002, 2003 that had the 6 draws in the group stage. My childhood was obsessed with that statistic there. They won 0 wins, 6 draws, and 0 defeats in 2002, 2003. Any other bets time? Mark, we're going to cover a team that a lot of people have tipped as an outsider for the Champions League before the playoff rounds, maybe halfway through the league phase. They've obviously hit a few stumbling blocks, and obviously were unlucky to lose last week 2-1. What do you make of them going forward, and what's your sort of angle for a bet in the second leg?
Yeah, you're talking about Atalanta playing Club Brugge, trading 2-1 after the first leg. Yeah, agree. Probably unfortunate well, they definitely are unfortunate to have lost that first leg. Very, very upset the Italians were at the end of that match. I don't know if anyone saw, the game was 1-1 heading deep into stoppage time, and the Turkish referee, Halil Umut Mela, gave a very, very controversial penalty to Club Brugge. To say it was innocuous would have been a huge understatement. Atalanta understandably lost their heads at that decision. Three players were booked for protesting. Gasperini, the head coach, was going berserk on the sidelines. Brugge scored the penalty and take a 2-1 lead to Bergamo now. You have to expect a backlash and expect Atalanta to put it back and potentially progress. But they have only won 3 of the last 13 across all comps now. So kind of happy to leave the major markets alone. The Atalanta already won 58 to win the game, which is short enough. We've seen Club Brugge be stubborn enough in most of their matches in this competition. But yeah, cards were the angle that intrigued me here. The first legs were very underwhelming from a cards perspective, just 2.3 per game on average across the 8 first legs. But as we know, history says second legs do tend to see a reasonable increase in goals as well as cards, with the sort of tension and desperation creeping in. And just kind of going back to that first leg, there's a lot of anger and frustration from Atalanta here. And, there's a lot of tension in the air after what happened. And I think that could easily play out to be quite a feisty, card-heavy game here. So quite happy to take the overs, considering the sort of backdrop to this match, but also the appointment of the referee, which is Felix Zweier, the German. He's given 5 cards or more in 16 of his last 21 UEFA club assignments, and that's a hell of a record in its own right. But he's given 6 cards or more in 14 of those 21 European fixtures going back to 2022 or the summer of. So he's not afraid to sort of flash the cards and punishment when required. And if you look at his record this season, he managed to give 3 in the Inter's 4-0 thrashing of Red Star. Since then he's given card totals of 9, 5, and 6 in this competition. And if you go across all competitions, he's given at least 4 cards in 14 of his last 16. So I think if Atalanta bring the noise, bring that frustration, Club Brugge sort of embrace the occasion, we should get quite a card-heavy fixture. So over 4.5 cards, we'll be trading around sort of 185, 190, and I think that's a fair angle to take.
Okay, and Adrian, you are also covering this game, and you fancy goals, but ultimately Atalanta to get on top here.
Yeah, completely agree with Mark. I mean, yeah, shocking decision, and they were right to be angry. Yeah, so bad. But they'll be really pumped for this, and that's probably what they need, because as Mark also outlined, they're not in great form. Atalanta, obviously brilliant earlier on in the season, but in 2025 it's been pretty average from them. Only 1 win in 6 this calendar year in their own stadium. Only scored once in their last 3 home games as well. So confidence is a little bit low. So maybe they just need something to get the old juices flowing, to get their season going again. And I think that Gasperini is a coach that I really rate. I think he's top class. And I think he'll press all the right buttons to get the team in the mood for this. And I think that they can win the game. And I think they probably should win the game against Club Brugge, who are decent, but not. They're much better at home than they are away. We saw, didn't we, at the Etihad, they gave City a scare and scored, went in front, and then ultimately they ended up losing the game 3-1. But they do have that about them, Club Brugge. They can score home and away. In the Champions League, they have scored in 10 of their last 12 away games, Club Brugge, so including their last 5. So every away game this season. In all comps this season, they've had 18 away games, scored in a lot of them. So, this is a team that would absolutely back themselves to notch on Italian soil. But can they keep Atalanta out? A pumped up Atalanta? I don't think they are. I mean, no, Atalanta aren't a high scoring team particularly, but every now and again they can smash them in. So they walloped Sturm Graz, didn't they, in the group phase? at home. Not saying they're going to wallop Brugge, but they can score 2 or 3 here, I think, against a team that since that City game have had 3 games in the Belgian league away from home, lost 1 and drawn 2. So they're not great travellers, and I think that Atalanta will win the game. But because Brugge have scored in every away game this season, I feel like I'm compelled to add that to the pick, and it takes it to quite a nice price actually of 3.3.
Okay, yeah, that's 3.3 and another game covered. There 5 games essentially covered, and the team is, I'm really looking forward to these second legs. They're always so much better than first legs, and so much narratives from that first leg. And Mark, obviously the biggest game of all, which we've already touched on, is Madrid versus Manchester City. And to remind listeners and viewers that haven't heard about this before, so correct score markets are available on sportsbooks and obviously in the Match with Betting Exchange. But the Match with Betting Exchange only goes up to 3-0 or 3-1 or 3-2, and after that you can cover every other score with any other home win. For example, for Madrid, which gives you the 4 goals Madrid score with any sort of win, if that makes sense, 4 goals or more.
Yeah, so I thought it was quite a difficult slate for the long shot. So I'm going to have a swing at Real Madrid in the any other score. Correct score market at 5.3, which effectively, as you say, requires Real Madrid to win and score 4 goals or more, which sounds like quite a tall task, really. But they did manage 3 at the Etihad. Could easily have scored more. They had 20 attempts, 3.3 expected goals, 6 big chances. And I just think the way in which the tie is set up now, with City having to come on the offensive and try and turn the tables on Real Madrid, it just plays into their hands as a counter-attacking team, really. So, PSG scored 4 goals against Man City in the second half alone. Arsenal, of course, scored 5 against them not long ago. Sporting also scored 4 against them earlier this season. Madrid scored 3 against Man City last April here, against a much better Man City side at the Bernabeu. So it's not really unthinkable to consider they could score at least 3 again, and then we just require a 4th. And from what we've seen at Man City this season, defensively they are still a bit of a shambles. Sure, they might improve with Nico in midfield, but Akanji's missing again. There's problems at right back, and I just think that's an area in which Real Madrid can really expose them. So I fully expect Los Blancos to score at least 2 goals, possibly 3, and hopefully get a 4th for the big price.
Okay, that's 5.3, and Mark's outlined that. Check that out in the correct score market on Matchbook on the exchange. Well, we're checking out, and a lot of juicy value prices in that correct score, well-priced market, I would say, on the Matchbook Betting Exchange. Adrian, take it away with your selection here. Obviously, Dortmund got the job done 3-0 away to Sporting. They lost over the weekend there, and they're not in the best run of form at the moment. So despite that win, there's definitely a bit of value in Sporting.
Well, I think so. Yeah, it's a fun one, isn't it? Because they're 3-0 down. They've got nothing to lose. Sporting. It's been a bit of a disaster. The whole divorce from Amorim, hasn't it? It's been a disaster for Amorim himself at Manchester United.
For everyone.
And they've not done very well either, have they? But it doesn't mean that they can't turn it on every now and again. And Dortmund 3-0 up. I wouldn't say it's a dangerous scoreline, but it's a scoreline that might get a player feeling in the comfort zone, and that's never where you really want to be. And Dortmund at home in the Champions League, we know are really good. They've got a great record, but of late at home, they've won 1 of their last 7. Really poor. They've lost to Stuttgart, they lost to Leverkusen, they lost to Barcelona. Okay, all 3 not bad teams at all, but neither are Sporting. And no clean sheet at home since November the 23rd, and they've conceded multiple goals in 4 of those 7 games, which span that run, going back to late December. So they're conceding a lot of goals in front of their own supporters. And as bad as Sporting have been lately, they've got Gyökeres, which is great. They've got other decent players we know. They've scored in 28 of their last 29 away games, full stop. So I fancy them to score here. Recent form would tell you that they'll probably let 1 in as well. But could they score 2 and win the game, or 3 and win the game and go out? Maybe, because Dortmund are in this weird position and they're not in good form at the moment. Sporting have got a young team, hungry team, a lot of legs. If they get their mindset right and they score early here, they will go for it. I'm telling you, they will go. They will try and remember what made them such a good team to qualify for the Champions League, and maybe tear into Dortmund. That's how I'm seeing it. I don't think they'll go through. I don't think they'll overturn it particularly, but I do think there's a long shot that comes in at 6.0. They can win this game. I think they can. And but can they keep a clean sheet? The way that they've defended lately probably says no. So it would be a heck of a surprise, I guess. But that's what long shots are all about. 6.0 Sporting and both teams score.
Yeah, it's always
that was one of my considerations actually, because excuse me, of all the first legs, that was the most. The 3-0 scoreline did not reflect that match whatsoever. Hugely generous for Dortmund. So absolutely, I completely agree. Sporting have a good chance there to get a positive result.
Okay, yeah, I was just going to say quite a decent case there. Always difficult picking out the shocks in advance. We might have picked one there. Best bet time. Both these bets were covered from the guys. So if you are listening for a bit of fun, try and think to yourself what was the best case each of them made. Mark, what is your best bet?
I've got a healthy respect for PSV, particularly in Eindhoven, but they're playing a Juventus side who have deservedly beaten them twice already this season. They're chasing the tie, which means they need to force the issue. And they're playing a side who've lost just 4 games all season. A Juve side who've looked much more rounded, much more confident, much more slick in forward areas now that Kolo Muani's in the side. And so to be able to get them on side with the quarter goal start here just seems like a really nice position to be in. Only a PSV win stops us making money. So happy to have Juve on side with the start.
And same question to you, Adrian.
Yeah, well, look, I was reassured when Mark went for Milan and under 4.5 goals for the game against Feyenoord. So that's tipped me over the edge. I went for Milan and under 3.5 at 2.18, and I do think that's a likely scenario. They're not expansive really under Conceição. Last 11 games in all competitions, 9 have gone under 3.5. 7 of those 9 have gone under 2.5. They're picking up a lot of wins or in tight games. Milan, Feyenoord, 1 clean sheet in 18 away games this season. I think it's going to be really hard for them to protect the lead. It was a bad game, that first leg. I don't think this is going to be a lot better. But Milan have surely got enough quality with Leao and the others, Pulisic and Felix, Gimenez as well. They've got enough here to get the job done, but I don't think it will necessarily be pretty. So yeah, Milan to win and under 3.5 goals. This one could be 1-0. It could go to extra time.
Okay, yeah, so fascinating. I think the guys have set up all the games there. We've 8 games in total in the Champions League. We've covered 6 of them there, including all the early kickoffs. So plenty of bets and action for you there if you want it. And for a reminder of what the guys pick, check out insights.matchbook.com. We see phenomenal numbers going over there this season. Well worth checking out. It also has our Spotify, YouTube links there if you want to check out our timestamps and descriptions and go to specific games. But yeah, enjoy the Champions League. If you're having a bet along with Matchbook, please enjoy, but please do so responsibly. I'll be back with the guys on Thursday, all gone well, to preview another busy weekend in the Premier League. But until then, take care. Bye-bye.